It's spring break and Easter's just around the corner, so I thought I'd just make videos all this week because it's fun. But we'll start with an Easter hymn. Christ the Lord is risen today. This is one of the famous ones, like Christ the Lord is risen today. Right? And it's one of the funny hymns because it's relatively famous, kind of like all creatures of God and King. And it's got like an Alleluia at the end, and so people don't know anything but the first line. They'll sing Christ the Lord is risen today, and then Alleluia, and then they don't know the rest of the words. So it's like blah 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 Alleluia, and so we laugh about that. Same thing with all creatures of God, our God and King, and there's a couple other famous ones like that. It's an interesting format. It's got 4 phrases, and each one has a head and then an end motive, which is repeated and then varied as it goes on. And so we'll just sit down and analyze each one of these phrases. I just want to have you remember something that I said in an earlier video, that when we read letters or the basic things, that would be the same as notes, right? And then words are like chords, right? And then scales, well, they combine the words together in ways to make cadences and phrases and things. It's like grammar, and that helps us understand this on a more meta level. So because of that, we're going to look at the way that the chords and the scales interact, especially at the ends of lines or phrases. So let's just start off right away here. We're in the key of C. No sharps and flats. Starts with a C chord, ends with a C chord. We're in the key of C. Maybe I'll stick these underneath so I have a little padding for the pen to pick up on here. And that's true, but we should examine at the end of each of these phrases what we're in, what kind of cadence we have here. And so if you see we have a C, C, and an E, and a G, it's incomplete, but that's a C chord, and that would be my 1 chord right there. And then here's my G, which is my 5 chord, right? G, B, D, right? G, B, D right there. F's my 7. And this is my C and the E, which is a 1, 6, 4 going to a 5, 7. And we bracket those together and call that all a 5 chord because this is a tonic cadential 6, 4 chord right there. All counts as 5. Right? You can hear that. It's ornamentation, right? Or right? And we'll just, that means we should, this is a perfect authentic cadence in the key of C, right? Root position 5 going to a root position 1 with root on top. And that tells us we should analyze this phrase in C, most likely. So that being said, let's just go through here. Stop when you need to. Hopefully, if you're good with all your notes and good with all your chords and you're fine in the key of C and understand chord function, then this will go quickly. If not, pause it, But this is my 1 chord right here, C, C, E, right? It's enough to know that it's a 1. It's in root position, so I don't need to write anything else. It's a 1 chord, uppercase Roman numeral, because it's a major chord right there. This is just another iteration of the 1 chord. Here it's different though. See the B, it's not in the C chord, right? G, B, D, G. This is going to be my 5 chord. Because the 3rd's in the bass right there, the figured bass is a 6. Tells us we're not looking at the root, but the root is a 6th above that note right there. And then 5 likes to go back to 1, and there's my 1 chord. You can just confirm it looks the same rather than respelling everything, okay? And then risen today, well, I have an F, A, F, C. This is an F chord, which would be my 4 chord in the key. If you're going, how did that happen? Remember that C, D, E, F, G, A, and B are my notes. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so a chord built on scale degree 1 is called the 1 chord. The F chord is built on scale degree 4. That's a 4 chord. 3rd is in the bass, so we used 6 to remind ourselves that the root is a 6th above, right there. This is just a reiteration of the F chord, F, F, C, and the A, F, A, C, right? It's just in root position. We're going to put a 5, 3 to remind us that we've changed the root position. If this was a test or something, you had to put something in for every chord. You could put these all in. You don't need to though. Okay, and then we have a C here, but we still have the remnants of the F chord right here, which then resolves down. So that's going to be a 4, 6, 4 going to a 1 chord. And here again, it's like a cadential chord, similar setup. It's ornamenting that that's coming up afterwards. Yeah, I mean, we could look at this and say like it's a suspension, right? And a suspension, but that's sort of implied already there by the 6, 4. All right, and then here, well, we could be tempted to analyze the chords between on the eighth notes. Some places that's useful, but let's just start with what's on the beats, okay? We have C, G, C, E. So there's my C chord, which is a 1 chord right here, right? And then if we look on the next beat right here, we have a C holding through and an E and a G. It's still a 1 chord, but it's a 1 in first inversion. So there's my 6 right there, okay? This is, well, it's kind of funny because it's a D and an A and a C and an F, but then this resolves down and that skips down, and we're trying to figure out what that is. I got a feeling that that's a non-chord tone right there, right? And this is B, D, F, and A, right? And that would be a 7 chord, right? 7 half diminished, thirds in the bass, it's got a 7th in the chord, so 6, 5. It's tricky because you could say, isn't this just a D minor chord right here? And yes, you could. If you wanted to, you could call this a 2 chord right there, but then it's moving to a 7 because 2 doesn't go to 1, 7 goes to 1, right? 7 is a pseudo-dominant. So if you're analyzing between the beats, you could go 2 here, D, F, A, non-chord tone, resolving into a 7 right there. Sure, both, yes. But then 7 is the chord that takes us to a C chord right there. And this is an F, A, F, C. It's another 4 chord right there, like that. Okay? We should also give note that although the C is holding through, we have a G and a D and an F. And in some cases, we'll find that if this had dipped down to a B, then we'd have a passing 5 chord here, and you'll actually see that happen in the full version at the end of the piece right here, okay? All right, but for right now, we'll just call them non-chord tones, passing notes, okay? Cool. Next phrase, slightly different contour, although it goes up and comes down, right? At the beginning, same exact ending tacked on. If we look, they're note for note the same, which is really cool. Means it's easy to sing for a lay choir to do. It's hard enough to play. This is awkward fingerings and things that you have to work out and practice. So if you've earned it once, you can play it again right there. I'm not going to analyze it. It's exactly the same, okay? I will put this as same as measures 3 and 4 right there, okay? Exactly the same. That means we're still analyzing the key of C, right? So if I look here, F, F, A, C, it's my 4 chord. It's in first inversion. It's going to my 1 chord, C, E, C, G, C, E, G. 1 chord right here. Here's another F chord right there, right? And it's coming to another 1 chord, but this one's in inversion. This is literally just going 4, 1, 4, 1, right? And again, we have the same situation here as we had up here. Same voicing and everything. Is this a D minor chord? If you want to call it a 2, you can, but then you have to look here and say, well, when these resolve down, then I have a 7 diminished, half diminished 6, 5 right there. Or you can just say the whole thing is a 7 half diminished 6, 5. But that's necessary because we want a dominant or a pseudo-dominant to take us to the 1 chord right there. This is the same cadence right there as at the end, just switched up. Here's a 1, 6, 4, right? G's with the C and the E going down there to a 5, and this is a cadential tonic 6, 4 like that right there. Exactly the same as that. Okay? It's funny if we're drawing this, you know, like how do we draw this out? Is this A and B? Because usually we go off of the head motives. Are they the same or different? And they're different, however, they're similar. And then the ends are exactly the same. So, you know, without listening or without sight singing it, oralizing, you might say they're different. So it's A and B. And yet the back halves are identical and these have similar kind of contours. Maybe it's A and A prime. I don't know. This is where the beautiful thing about music is it's got such variation, you never know. Okay, this is where the piece gets fun. I'm going to slide this up a little bit right here. This phrase right here, if we look at the end, I've got a G chord. And you might go like half cadence, but watch out, there's an F sharp right there. And this here, if you interpret this in the key of G, because F sharp makes it sound like a G scale, I've got my D, I've got a 1-6-4. This is a G, right? 1-6-4, going to my 5-7. It's exactly the same as this right here, but transposed up to the key of G, and that's exactly what happened. So we have to think of ourselves in the key of G. Here's a PAC in G, right? Which is the dominant, which is the place I want to go to. And this is a 1-6-4, going to a 5-7. When it resolves, going to a 1. This is all considered a 5 chord right there. So that means, especially looking back, there's another F sharp right there. There's another F sharp. I know that that's not F sharp, but the majority are. We're set up on a G chord. We have a perfect authentic cadence in G at the end. We're going to analyze this in the key of G. So we're going to change our key right there. All right, that makes this a 1 chord right there, GBD, right? And then here, if you hold this through, I've got a G holding through, but I've got a D, an F sharp, an A, and a C, and this becomes a suspension. So this is a 5 chord, right? D, F sharp, A, C. And it's got the 5th in the bass. So we're gonna go 4-3 for our 5th in the bass, figured bass with the 7th in the chord, and 5 likes to go to 1, and this is a 1-6 right there, okay? And this is a 1 right here, yes? Right, 1-5-3, like that. But then we have an F natural. It's throwing us back to the idea of the key of C. However, we know this phrase is in the key of G, and so we're not going to change keys. We're going to say this is tonicizing the C temporarily, or it's a secondary dominant. So when we add this sound in right here, it changes from feeling like a 1 chord to a 5 of C, which is 5 of 4. So I'm going to go 5, 7th in the bass, 2 of 4. And this is my 4 chord right there in first inversion, right? And again, this holds over and becomes a non-chord tone, but I have a G and a D and a D and a B. This is like a 5, well, it's a 1-6-4. It's a passing chord, which will take us to the 5. So it's a, it's a 4-1-6-4, 1-6-4, which is just like a passing chord, because the bass line is working like a passing note to my other 4 chord right here. Okay, sorry, it's so messy. This is a 1-6-4 passing chord right there. Still thinking in the key of G. Okay, and then I'm in the key of G right here. I've got my G chord 1. We're just gonna look at beats. This is 1-6 right there. Here's my thing where you can say, is this a 2 chord? Is this a 7 chord? What is this, right? My D, F sharp, A, C. This is my 5-4-3 right there, right? Going to my 1 chord. This is a 4 chord in first inversion. C, E, G, G holding over, right? I think these are just passing notes for us for right now. Cool. Again, third phrase kind of looks like these other phrases, but it's in the key of G, and we have an altered but very similar because of it's transposition of their first cadences there. Final last section. We're on camera. We're still on camera. You can see that we're back to the key of C. There's no more F sharps. We're back in the key of C, right there. Okay. So we've had C for the first phrase, C for this phrase, G for the middle one, and then back to C. Sets us up nicely. Let's take a look at our cadence. We have a C chord in first inversion, or sorry, root position with C on top. We have a G chord here with the 7, so that's 5-7 right there. We have a 1-6-4. There's my C, G's, and E's. 1-6-4. It's getting kind of messy down here. I'm going to change color so you can see up here. 1-6-4 going to a 5-7, going to a 1. And this is all 5 chord because this is a tonic cadential 6-4. And this is a PAC in C. Right? Okay. So now let's go back. Well, it looks like this is a G chord, but we're going to think of ourselves in the key of C. So you could think it was 1 in the old key, but now you're going to think it's 5, right? Passing notes, right? And then here's my 7th right there. This is still a G chord, G, B, D, B, G. This is just my 7th right there, so it becomes a 5-2, coming to a 1-6. It's the same figure as what happened right here, except because we're in a different key, we named them slightly differently. Instead of 5 to a 4 going to a 4, it's 5-2 going to a 1-6. Okay, there's my 1 chord again right here. I think that can be just dispensed as a passing note. And then this is a 4 chord, F, right? First inversion, proper F again in root position. It's the same deal that they're doing here that they did earlier up at the very beginning. That's intentional. So even if the line is different, the second measure is the same as the beginning, right? It sets this up. In fact, it's identical as the beginning, right? So it makes us remember, even if you're not aware of it consciously, on a subliminal level, it definitely feels like we've come home again, right? Here, last cadence, they've made a point of doing all these extra chords and things. I think we're going to try and do every single set of 8th notes as we plow in here. Here's my 1 chord. This is a G and a B and a D and an F. So that's a 5-4-3, right? 5th in the bass. This is my 1-6 right here. And this is my 1-5-3. Okay, so it's just 1 with a passing 5 chord, and then it's all 1 chords. Here, we tie into my 4 chord, okay? And this is B, D, D, F. It's a B chord, that's my 7, half diminished, right? And it'd be 6-5. Going to my 1 chord, I'm just gonna shift up to here so it's easier to see, 1. And this is D, F, F, A. This is a 2 chord in first inversion, right there, like that, which loves to be just before there. It's fun. It's tricky to play this one. All the beginning parts are relatively easy to play, and then the fingering for this right here on the piano is tricky. And this is just, I mean, it's not impossible, but it takes practice to do, because you have to catch so many things going on, all these different fingers moving. And yet it's really rewarding. So, you know, starting from right here, you get this whole, and you hear the 5-7 chord right there, and then this, and then your tenor, you know, catches into the tie, right? And then 7 chord, and then 1-6, right? Oops, sorry. There we go. And then, you know, a 2-6 predominant brings us to a 1-6-4-5-1. It's really pretty. It's very great. Okay, hopefully that was fun for you. You might be singing or playing this in church or something, or here at this coming Easter time, and now you'll be able to go like, aha, 2 phrases in C, 1 phrase in G, coming back to C, all derivative similar endings for the Alleluias, right? And even specking out that this measure right here is the same as that measure right there for the return, even though the beginnings are different, helps sort of make us feel like we've had a return to the beginning, partly by key, but partly by similar notes as well. Hopefully you'll be able to hear that this cadence is literally a transposition of this cadence right here, right there, these two, okay? And maybe that will give you ideas of your own for writing things too. All right.